The previous three videos were really about how to construct your pencils, and so we've gone through, how to create one that's kind of flat, doesn't really do anything, and that is useful. We've talked about how to create one that's a little more dynamic or moves back into space. We've talked about making one that's not sharpened. And now, what do you do if you've got, these work great if you're working on kind of a rigid rectilinear, like building a house or something that has a lot of straight edges. But what do you do if you've got to deal with something that has a lot of curves? Well, you can do it a few different ways. Here in Illustrator probably is one of the easier ways that you can deal with it. We'll talk about how to deal with it in Photoshop as well, or how to maybe combine the two a little bit different ways. But the easiest is, if I've got if I know how much to arch something or how much to warp something, Illustrator can't be beat because I lay the thing on and I can click preview and I can tell it to arch it more or arch it less. I can tell it to arch vertically. That really throws it at distortion. And so I can play with these things and it's going to bend my pencil for me. This thing here is going to take some of my perspective out of it as it bends it. This is going to stretch it vertically or smush it. And so now I've taken and I've really highly stylized this pencil. And that's okay. That it might be appropriate. And you can see some of the examples that I gave you where they've completely warped the pencil themselves for their own need. And all of these things have a little bit different feature to them. So if I bulge it, yeah, that one bulges. The thing is, there's a lot of unintended consequences in Illustrator. Those unintended consequences tend to get annoying, which is why I like to maybe fiddle with stuff here and then take it to Photoshop to maybe erase some of the unintended consequences. So like maybe I want that, and I've got a weird something sticking out. Like right here, there's a little weird something sticking out, and a little here, weird something sticking out. I can erase that in Photoshop a lot easier than I can in Illustrator. So you decide, and then to give yourself maximum control, you can expand appearance. And now my handlebars are around this, and I can change its color or change its gradient. I can select one space at a time. That's an advantage over Illustrator. I can move pretty quickly. The thing it doesn't do very well is it doesn't allow me to paint or control the gradient sometimes exactly the way that I want it. I mean, I can take this and I can do that number, but it doesn't give me a tremendous amount of control. So in another video, I'm going to show you maybe better ways that you can control that stuff, or you can kind of eyeball it. So like if I know, I can say, oh, the lights, that's my color of my pencil, and then underneath there would be slightly deeper shade of pencil color, and I can mix up my own pencil color so that it looks shadowed. If you're more familiar or comfortable with Illustrator, I want you to do what you feel most comfortable with. You can use a combination of the two. So that's all for this one, talking about the warping things. I'm going to pause it now, and I'll be back in just a minute with maybe how to apply the warp to something. So in this lesson, I'm not going to, because there are a million different possible solutions to what it is that you're drawing, but I want you to try to envision how you might be able to use the warp tools and the pencil that you've created, or pencils that you've created, to bend around your form. So maybe this is the pencil that you've created, and you're going to use that pencil as a pincer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the pencil shorter. Select all these points back here and slide them in. And I take my pencil and rotate it. And I want that part of the pencil smush it just a little bit. And you know, you don't have to keep its exact proportions, but I want it to kind of wave with the shape of that pincer on the crab. So I'm going to take my effect, and it kind of reminds me of the flag or the wave. And I'm going to hit preview. Ooh, that is way out of control. So I'm going to dial that back. Turn this back to 0. So I'm getting there. That's close. I can kind of see through. I'm getting there. And that goes the wrong way. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at the features of the thing that I'm trying to illustrate, and I'm trying to get this thing to warp into a still recognizable pencil, but also something that is going to fit with sort of the shape of my thing. And I can take one of two approaches. I can do this approach, which is going to drastically warp my pencils. Or I can take a much more linear approach. Expand. So there, that fits my pincer. I might have another maybe smaller pencil here, and maybe another portion of a pencil here. I might also cut my pencil apart, and maybe I just have the barrel. Maybe I'm just trying to create the idea of segments, and I use, turn this green, turn this nothing, and effect 3D extruding bevel, get it up out of the way. Maybe I'm trying to make just that one segment one pencil barrel. And so you can kind of see what I'm going for right there. I get it, its basic perspective, its basic shape and size. And obviously I would put its stripes on it. Move it into place. And again, your photograph is nothing more than a guide, a template. So maybe my next one, it does this. Got to expand it. So now the crab's legs are segments of barrels, you know, and maybe there's a little pink eraser up here, or maybe not, maybe it's just the stripes. It doesn't have to be completely pencils, it can be pencil parts. It could be, you know, as you have seen some of the examples, I could take and give reference to, come back here and grab, I could layer them. So I'll take and I'm going to shrink this to maybe the size of my crab's head. And I'm going to really bend this one. I need a clean one all the time, so I'm going to copy and paste. That one up there is going to be my clean one. And I'm going to try to bend this one half the size of the crab head. It's just going to be from there down. Effect, warp, and arch. Preview. That's getting there. And I can apply multiple effects. That's not bad. And object expand. Thing to remember is that if you're going to apply multiple, and I'm going to rotate this. So now I'm trying to get it to shrink it. Trying to get it to the relative shape and size of my crab here, and rotate it again, smush it again. And again, this is a guideline. This is an illustration. It's an interpretation of your photograph. It doesn't have to be an exact replica. So then maybe I take and I rotate and I bring that forward. And I shrink it again and I rotate it. So then that becomes the model which you work by, and maybe the next one that you do doesn't warp quite so much. Effect, warp, arch. Maybe that's not the right one. A lot of this is trial and error, and by feel, and if you don't expand it, it will apply a totally different effect to it. So every time you put an effect, you have to expand it. So what you want to do, you want to have more detail rather than less detail. I wouldn't recommend having like that entire pencil be an entire leg. I would have multiple pieces, because the fewer that you use, the less information you're giving to our viewer. Now that being said, if you use 1,000, more isn't always more. You want to give enough information to the viewer that says, oh, that's a crab, or oh, that's a leg. Maybe this is one piece of that leg, and then I move on to the second piece of that leg, and it looks segmented. It's really distilling down or boiling down what makes your object or your thing your thing. How many details do you have, and how many things can you throw away? So that's the real problem that you're solving. Good luck, and we'll talk about shading or coloring things in another time.